Like I said, we're in Leviticus chapter 24. As I said, Zach's message was different, Toby's was different. Paints a good picture, but now we're coming to an interruption in chapter 24 where someone who blasphemes the name of God gets judged. And we all know that the basis for obedience to the law is fear of the Lord. If you have no fear, if it doesn't bother you to blaspheme the name of God, then you probably don't respect who God is, or God himself. And by fear, we're talking about respect. But I think it's both. It would scare me to do that. But I want to have enough respect that I wouldn't do that. And more than likely, all of us have at one point. The dictionary defines blasphemy as an insult that shows contempt, disrespect, or lack of reverence concerning God. It would be considered as a religious crime, if you will. And every Jew, this was important, every Jew knew the third commandment. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. The Jews at this time were so fearful of taking God's name in vain and breaking this commandment that they substituted the name of Adonai for Jehovah when they read the scriptures, so they would never have to speak God's name at all. To respect a name is to respect the person who bears that name. And really, all of us, it should be our highest respect of God and respect his name. So starting at verse 10, and the son of an Israelitish woman whose father was an Egyptian went out among the children of Israel, and this son of the Israelitish woman and a man of Israel strove together in camp. Strove means to fight. And the Israelitish woman's son blasphemed the name of the Lord and cursed, and they brought him unto Moses, and his mother's name was Shelemith, the daughter of Debri, of the tribe of Dan. So we know this child, or this boy, this blasphemer, was from a mixed marriage between an Egyptian father and a Jewish mother, and from the tribe of Dan. It would almost be somewhat safe to infer that maybe this boy didn't grow up with the proper respect or proper education about blaspheming the name of God. Even in the days of Moses, mixed marriages of believers, and notice I'm not talking about race, so I don't get called a racist later on when somebody listens on social media. We're talking about believers of God and non-believers, as I refer to it as a mixed marriage. But mixed marriages at that time of unbelievers and believers created more problems for God's people. Moses had to deal with a group of Egyptians who left Egypt during the Exodus, who just wanted out of Egypt, but really they didn't have that big of a heart for God. It was just another place for them to go. So this Egyptian Jew got into a fight with another Jew in the camp. During the fight, he blasphemed the name of God, whether he cursed that the boy was in the fight with, or whether out of discouragement or aggravation he cursed the name of God, we know he blasphemed. How many of you would agree with me? Usually what's on your mind comes out here at some point. I have vowed to myself, there are times when I go to work that I know in certain settings, and I know in certain meetings that are going to be controversial. I've vowed to myself to keep my mouth shut. I can't do it. It sits and it burns in my soul until I clear the air. It's not always good. Usually what you're thinking comes out. There are different things that can be considered blasphemy. And you may not see it that way. I didn't think of it that way until I studied this. Perjury, stealing. Richard's preached on this before about taking an oath, but not swearing. And the reason for that, Jesus says that our life should be so pure that we shouldn't have to even swear to an oath. Our life should be so pure that we shouldn't have to question about, I have to make an oath and swear to it. Verse 12 says, they put him inward, that the mind of the Lord might be shewed him. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, bring forth him that cursed without the camp, and let all that heard him lay their hands upon his head, and let all the congregation stone him. Thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel, saying, whosoever curseth his God shall bear his sin. And he that blasphemeth the name of the Lord, he shall surely be put to death, and all the congregation shall certainly stone him, as well the stranger as he that is born in the land, when he blasphemeth the name of the Lord, shall be put to death. If this would have happened with a regular Jewish boy, Moses would have known exactly what to do without question. With the boy, we know his father was an Egyptian, and at the time, the law had nothing to say about that part of a mixed marriage. And as we all know, as societies developed, as the world went on, we continue to create new laws to address different problems. So Moses is smart. He commands the boy to be confined. He's put in essentially in jail until he could consult with the Lord for the Lord's guidance. So the Lord would instruct him what to do. Moses didn't have the right answer, but he was humble enough to ask God for direction. God had given Israel all the laws they needed to govern their life, but as I said before, every time something new occurs, Moses and the tribe leaders had to interpret the law and apply them just like we still today as new things happen. When they couldn't come up with a solution to the problem, they sought God. And I'd ask you, have any of you ever thought that once you got saved, when you first got saved, you wouldn't have any more problems? All the problems or all the answers would be there to you immediately. Doesn't happen that way. I thought that too. It's a sign of immaturity as a Christian. Because if we never have to pray, if we never have to read the scripture, we never have to seek God, if I never have to come to Richard for godly counsel, it's a sign of me not growing. God commands that because when we seek him, he supplies the problem or the answer to the problems later on. Very rarely do I pray that I have an answer automatically. A lot of prayers I still don't have an answer to, but I keep trusting. You can seek other ways. Go to shrinks. I'm not bad mouthing that. Go see a psychiatrist. You do a lot of other things. They're like a road map. They'll tell you different ways to get there. But this here's like a compass.
Oh, yeah.
It'll keep you going in the right direction.
Glory.
So then God told Moses what to do. The blasphemer was to be brought out of the camp. All the witnesses that heard him curse the name of God put their hands on him. That's a way for them to say, I saw it happen, I heard it happen. And then they put him to death. Blasphemy was what we would call now a capital crime. So the lesson learned, the same law that applied to the Israelites also applied to sojourners, which was a stranger, to those who lived with the Jews. And he that killeth any man shall surely be put to death. That's 17. 18, and he that killeth a beast shall make it good, beast for beast. And if a man cause a blemish in his neighbor, as he hath done, so shall it be done to him. Breach for breach, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. As he hath caused a blemish in a man, so shall it be done to him again. He that killeth the beast, he shall restore it, and he that killeth the man, he shall be put to death. Ye shall have one manner of law as well for the stranger, as for the one of your own country, for I am the Lord your God. God further applied this type of legal decision to other areas of life and placed with that law that the punishment must fit the crime. It's known as the law of retaliation. And it was a law that made sure that the guilty offender was not punished beyond or more severely than the crime that he had committed. A murderer was to be put to death. But penalties for other crimes had to suit the offense. Verse 23, and Moses spake to the children of Israel that they should bring forth him that had cursed out of the camp and stone him with stones, and the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. So Moses and the people were outside the camp. They did exactly what God commanded them to do. Murder in the Bible is a serious crime. Why is that? We're all made in the image of God. To kill a human being is an attack on God's image.
You think of that.
I'm not going to go into it real far. I had mid-2000s, I was undercover, and I had an informant who answered to me. And ultimately, after I handled that informant for a length of time, they were killed because of the information they provided us.
Oh my.
And some of you may not think there is a death penalty in West Virginia. There's not by state terms, but federal government there is. And it was interesting to sit and they actually did, the government with the U.S. Attorney's Office did a death penalty. I had to go through the process 2 times. And I said it took years off my life. So it took about a month to pick a jury. I think there was over 300 applications of jurors. And it's what the government would call voir dire. There was a questionnaire sent out to each juror. Each juror would show up at the U.S. or in the federal court, and the defense and the attorneys that represented the accused in this, one of them represented Zacharias Massawi, the other one represented Timothy McVeigh, who blew up the Oklahoma building. It was a tough trial. But in that voir dire, there were questions asked about philosophy of death penalty. A lot of those questions came from this. And out of those 300 people, my mind was blown on a bigger percentage of them, of how they would answer those questions. A lot of it was, do you believe eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth? A lot of those questions came from Leviticus. But you either had, if you were so far-sighted on this side like we are nowadays on even a mask, but if you were so, hey, execute him, I don't even want to hear the evidence, you obviously were not going to be a juror. If you were all the way on this side that says, I do not believe in death penalty, a lot of people, I'm Catholic, a lot of people, I'm religious, I don't believe in it, you were put out. But still today, a lot of those questions came from the Bible. And I didn't fully understand everything, but I took a shot at it here and it brought some stuff out, brought some things to memory. Life is a gift from God.
Yes, it is.
Only God can take life from you or
That's right.
instruct it to be taken. It's not up to me.
It's his business.
It's his business. But on the backside of that, God ordained human government in Romans. He's given civil authorities the power of the sword. If you want to read that, Romans 13, 1 through 5. Sometimes when we think of capital punishment, some look down upon it due to a lot of different reasons, as I cited just earlier in those questions. A lot of us think the law is to frighten people, to discourage you from committing a crime. I wish it was. But Kinky, does the law on speeding stop you from horsing that Mustang up the road? No. No. It doesn't me either. I'm not pointing out this Richard admissions or nothing. I mentioned Peggy Little, she's here. It didn't stop her that day. She was going 85 in front of my home chapel.
There you go.
But what I'm trying to get at is, we can put all kind of laws into place, and the longer I've been a trooper, the more I'm convinced there is not a bit more respect for much of the law anymore than some dog out here on the road. It doesn't deter. We've made different drug laws. I remember when I first started this, the sentencing guidelines in federal court were so much stronger, it didn't deter it, maybe a little bit. We have since then became a little bit more liberal with it because the mounting drug problem and every other crime continues to rise. I always think of the Bible when God said, my spirit will not always strive with man. That's about the world we're living in right now. There's not much on it. But the law's not really created to deter it. Sometimes it's a respect thing. We think it's to frighten people. If that would actually work, it would be great. But capital punishment is actually a declaration that men and women are special, that they're created in the image of God, and that life is sacred in the sight of God. There's not one bit of me thinks that capital punishment is a deterrent for crime. But as I said, I don't think any of our laws are. People still speed. They still steal things. They still abuse kids. A lot of these are repeat offenders. It just keeps going. So would any of us really want legislators to repeal any of our laws? Absolutely not. Capital punishment's not going to decrease the number of murders any more than me writing tickets decreases the amount of speeders. But lastly, capital punishment does declare that humans are made in the image of God, and it's made known how sacred life is. The last thing I'll say is Richard makes his way up here. For all of my sins, all of my wrongs, all of our wrongs, Jesus took our death penalty. He's one man that took all of my sin, all of my shame, all of my crime, and he took it to the cross, and he did it for all of us.